This tutorial video I'm going to be going into just setting up the document in Illustrator and getting ready to work on this UX UI assignment or exercise. So here in Illustrator I opened it just with I think it's 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixel square, and already I want to show people how to work with changing the artboard. So the artboard, just a reminder, is this white square that is surrounded by the gray workspace area. When you are exporting things, you usually, at least for this class, you are selecting to clip to the artboard, or you're just in the export as settings for Illustrator CC versions. You're just saying, indicating that you're wanting to export what is on the artboard. And so far we've only been working with one artboard. So I'm actually going to be going into how to work with multiple artboards in one Illustrator file, and that can actually expedite exercises and projects where you might be trying to work with mostly the same visuals, but maybe you're trying to make a couple of different versions. So you don't want to be working back and forth with multiple Illustrator files, things to get confusing. So instead, you can actually set up your document to have multiple artboards. And then when you are exporting things, you can decide, okay, I'm going to only export what's on this one artboard, or I'm going to export what's on all of these artboards. And that can save you from having to go back and forth. You can also make it so that you can only have to create one version of artwork or graphics that you're working with in Illustrator once, and then you can copy and paste it onto the same file in multiple artboards. And then you can, even working with layers, sometimes you just use the same artwork and then use layers to isolate different elements you're trying to change. So a couple different things we're going to be going over for this project, and part of the reason why I'm doing it with this project is because I think one of the requirements for the exercise that is going to be listed in Canvas, so make sure that you are referring to what's written in Canvas and posted on Canvas for the final requirements for what you need to do for this project. But I am going to make it so that I'm asking people to submit two versions of almost the same thing, and this is going to help you save a lot of time and also be able to view the two versions at the same time so that you can see, oh, you know, this is where I made this change, and then you're going to be able to export both of them relatively quickly. So going over here in Illustrator, first I want to change my my artboard size to be the size of the screen that I am working on this UX UI design for. And this is also going to be something that's very specific to the requirements in Canvas. So make sure you're referring to that instead of just listening to what I'm saying right now. But the version that we're working with right now is that I'm going to be asking people to develop a UX and UI design for their own devices. So I happen to have a very old device. I have an iPhone 5S, and I'm going to be developing an interface that fits those specific screen dimensions. And so across different companies, so between Android and iPhone, you're going to be working with different size screens, and then also across different versions. And this is important because if you're going to continue to work in UX UI design, so let's say that once you graduate, you're going to be moving on to working for a company where you're going to be making app designs, you have to develop, when you're working with UX and UI designs, you're not just developing one design that is then going to appear exactly the same way across all these different devices. So when you are working on these sole unique designs, you also have to make very small little changes for the most part, but you do have to make them so that they fit these different devices. And so this is something that you have to keep in mind. For instance, I have an older phone, but it is something that is still supported. So when I'm downloading Spotify, the newest version of Spotify, or when they make updates, they're not just making those updates to fit the screen of the iPhone 10. They're making those updates to fit across a variety of different versions of not only iPhones, but also Android, all the different phones that are available. So these are things to keep in mind. And for the requirements of this exercise, you are going to be working with a screen dimension that fits your own device, or just a device that you choose. So to do that, you are going to have to find out what the screen dimensions are. And so I'm going to now go to one of the most powerful digital tools out there, and that is the internet. So this is how a lot of, I've gotten questions in the past, like how do I find out the dimensions of my particular iPhone version? And this is really the best way to do it. If you don't have a UX, UI specific tool, so things like Adobe XD or Sketch app, those sometimes come with these templates already ready. So they'll have like these dimensions of these different devices. So you can go through and say, oh, I want this to fit the iPhone 6. And then I'm going to also look at how this will then fit into iPhone 7. And those apps will a lot of times have those dimensions. Same thing with Illustrator, but this is kind of the more, not the better way to do it, but depending upon what versions you're working with, this is also another way to find these dimensions if you don't have the most up-to-date versions, or if you're not working with more specific UX, UI development platforms. So I Googled this with my advanced knowledge of digital tools, and I see here that I'm going to be working with a screen size of 1136 pixels by 640 pixels, and so that is actually height times width there. So I'm going to write that down so I don't forget it. I'm just taking notes here off screen, and then I'm going to go into Illustrator, and I'm going to now change the size of my artboard to just fit that screen. So that way I know when I'm exporting this, when I'm done with all the graphics and all the design elements, I'm going to be able to export it and I know it's going to fit that screen size. So the way to change this, if you've already made your document, you don't need to make a new document. You can just go here to Artboard and you can double click the tool, and then this dialog box comes up and it shows you that you're working with Artboard 1 and that this is the width and the height. And so you can just go in here and change that. So I'm going to change that to 640 pixels, oh, not 49. And then the height is going to be changed to 1136. And so I'm going to say, okay, I'm not going to check any of this other things because, especially not constrained proportions, because that, if I were to do that, it would alter my height depending upon what I put in for the width, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to say okay, and now I'm still in the Artboard tool. So in order to get out of this Artboard tool, I have to hit Escape, and now I see that I have my artboard and it's the right dimensions that I'm going to be working with, and I am no longer using the tool. So if you have the tool selected and you forgot to hit Escape, what's going to happen now is that if you try to select something or move around, you're going to be drawing new artboards, and that is going to be the second thing that we're going to be doing here. Well, actually, I might save that for the next video. But if you accidentally do this, one way to get rid of these things is if you have to select the Artboard tool again, and then you can go, let me zoom in a little bit, to the unwanted artboards that you accidentally drew. You can just hit this little X up here in the top right corner, and then that's actually going to delete those. Delete. All right, and then either hit Escape or you can just go and select another tool, and you are going to have your one artboard. All right, so I think that this is where I'm going to end for this, and then in the next step, I'll be showing how to work with duplicate artboards. And I might actually bring that up a little bit later in the process, just because for now, this is really all you want to be doing is having your having your file set up with an artboard that fits the device that you're going to be working with for this exercise.